Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Got a little project we're going to work on today. Again, we're out here at the Georgia Museum of Agriculture, and they were running the steam-powered sawmill this past week and had a little mishap, not really a mishap, but had a piece break that shut the sawmill down, and job for the day is to make a couple of parts to get things going. So let me zoom you guys in here, show you what's going on, and show you the plan of attack. So the carriage on the sawmill, this older sawmill that we have made in the late 1800s, it's a little bit different design than a lot of the more modern sawmills, and quite honestly some of the newer models have a much improved design, but what we have works, and what we have is what we work with. And basically the way that the carriage moves back and forth to saw the logs is it has a rack and pinion system up underneath the bottom of the carriage. There's a long rack the entire length of the carriage, and then there's a little spur gear that is powered off the sawmill that that engages this rack and moves the carriage back and forth. So this is a piece of the rack off the bottom. It's actually a short section. Most of them are about twice this long. This happens to be a little short section that they had just to get the length right. But these are bolted to the carriage. So actually, you know, it's mounted on the bottom, and there's bolts that go up through the frame of the carriage that hold this on. And one of the bolts, it broke. So this is one of the bolts that was on this. And if you look, it has an unusual head. It's not a normal head. In fact, it's a kind of, flares out at 45-degree angles, and I don't know if you can see that, but there's a recess in the casting that little piece fits down into, and then that engages that, holds it in place, and then the bolt on the top, of course, tightens it all up. So talking to some of the guys that work out here, when they reworked this carriage some time ago, a lot of the original bolts were in really poor shape, and they replaced them with these bolts here, and these were some that they just made themselves. They just took, in this case, a 3/8" bolt, and they just ground the head and kind of made that shape. It doesn't really properly fit the hole, but that's what they did. And quite honestly, looking at the size of the hole, instead of being a 3/8 bolt, it needs to be a 7/16 bolt. And I've got some 7/16 bolts, but you know, they don't, of course, with the hex head on there, it doesn't fit down in there. So originally, these larger bolts, instead of I could just grind this out and do the same thing they did, but I want to do it right. And the original bolts that went in here had forged heads that fit this slot. And that is my plan, is I'm going to actually take some bolts, we're going to cut the hex heads off, and we're going to forge the right head to go on here. Now to do the forging, what I'm going to do is I've got a block of steel here, and we're going to actually make a die that the bolt will go down inside, that has the right shape in there. We're going to heat that head, or heat the metal up. We can either do it at the blacksmith shop or do it here in the shop with a torch. I'm not sure if the blacksmith's going to be out here today. But one way or the other. But then we will basically be able to just upset the steel into that form to give us the shape that we want. So right now the game plan is, before I do anything else, we've got to build a die, and that's what we're going to do. So, you know, this is going to be just a little small run of these. I'm not going into production business making thousands and thousands of them, or even hundreds. In fact, we're probably going to make about 10 new bolts. We only need one, but we're going to make some extras, so if we have some break in the future, we'll have some spares. So, you know, ideally, when you make a die like this, you would make it out of tool steel, so it really hold up well. I don't have a piece of tool steel. We're only going to be making 10, so I'm not too worried about, you know, making this as a production die. So we just got a piece of scrap steel right off the scrap metal rack out there. Have no idea what grade it is. It really doesn't matter. And this is what we're going to make the die out of. And I've got kind of in my head what I want to do, and we're just going to go through the steps and show you about making the die and then making the new bolts. First thing I want to do is I want to get these surfaces on this piece of steel just cleaned up. The dimensions really are not critical for what I'm doing, but with all the rust and bad surface on this, I just want to have a good finish all the way around. So we're going to square it up. I've got a shell mill here in the milling machine. And we're just going to take a few thousandths off each side until we get it to clean up. Slow that down a little bit, and we're not quite cutting good enough yet, so raise it up a little bit. I've got 3 sides of this cleaned up. I'm going to wait to do the top. This will be the top here in a bit. And just to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going with this. So I've got this block of steel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mill a little notch in here. We're going to have about a 1/2 inch area here at the top. It'll be notched out like such. And then once we get that done, we're going to cut this in half. And we'll have 2 sides of the die. And these will basically clamp together in a vise, and this little lip around here will sit on the top of the vise so that when we're hammering on it, it'll have something to catch in the vise. So right now I've switched over and I've got in a different shell mill here. This one here will cut a 90-degree corner. The last one I had was more for just doing a flat surface. It doesn't mill a corner in it like this. So we're going to go in and probably, I don't know, 3/8 deep, something like that. Just enough to catch that vise. Again, it's no critical measurement here. I'm just going to go until it looks right to me. But we've got that about 1/2 inch up here. So let's go ahead and start chewing that out. All right, a little mock-up here. So this is kind of what we're going after. I have, of course, finished cutting that step in there. We cut the bar in half into 2 halves, and now you can see how we're planning on kind of putting this in the vise. So as we're getting into this, I'm kind of deciding what we need to do next. So one thing I want to do, though, is I want to have some pins, 2 pins going through this to help keep these aligned, because when you pull this thing apart, it's wanting to flop all over the place. So I think we're going to have a couple of alignment pins. The bolts are going to have to be clamped in here because, let's see, let me zoom you out. So because of the length of the bolts, and we got the main screw here in the vise, we don't want this to go in the very center, or this will be in our way. So we're going to actually put our die kind of on one side of this, so that when we clamp this in here, it'll have room to clear down up underneath it so the bolt can drop through. So we're going to put a couple of pins in here next for alignment, and then we'll move on with the rest of the project. So I want to go ahead and put these pins in here, guide pins, and what I'm going to use are just some roll pins. I mean, I could, again, if this was going to be something that was going to be used a lot, I'd probably get some drill rod or something like that and use it, but for just a couple of times, we're just needing to keep them aligned. This is going to be good enough, and this is something that I had on hand. So this is a 5/16 by 2 inch roll pin, and we're just going to drill a 5/16 inch hole, and we'll press it in one side. We'll probably ream it out or drill it out just a little bit oversized on the other side so that it can move real good. So let's drill these holes. All right, we're going to drive these roll pins in. I want them to stick up about an inch and an eighth. So I've got a scale here, and let's see if y'all can see that. That's right where I want it. And we'll put the second one in here. Well, that one went a little bit deeper than I wanted, but fine. All right, so obviously now, you know, this will be a press fit in these as well. So we're going to measure this, and then we're either going to drill or ream, depending on the size, these holes so that we have a nice slip fit on there. I've got a letter Q drill bit, which is a 332 thousandths, which should give us a couple thousandths clearance. And we'll just run this through and enlarge them just a little bit. All right, so now my other half of the die will fit right on. This can drop down in the drill press, and as you can see now, it's not wanting to all fall in. And so this is just basically just to keep it aligned, just like this. I can open it up enough to slide my piece up in and out of once I get my my actual die made, and then when you clamp these together, you're good to go. Back over to the mill machine. Now we're going to go ahead and mill the top of this flat and flush, so that with the pins aligning it, everything is nice and flush on the top. It actually feels pretty good now, but I want to get a nice good finish on there. So we'll just go ahead and hit that and knock the hot spots off. So now we're ready to drill the hole through here. The rod is going to come up through the die. And what I've got is a drill bit. I measured the stock I'm using, the bolts, and they're actually a little bit undersized. And I went and found the closest drill bit, which was actually one size under the nominal size there. This is 27/64, so I'm actually drilling this with. It's going to give a good tight fit, which is what I want. I want it when these clamp together for it to grip the bolt coming up through there, so that so it actually needs to be just a little bit undersized, not much, but just so that it'll tighten up on that bolt. So we're going to go ahead and drill this through now. All right, guys, we are getting down now where we need to mill the little 45-degree angle in there that's going to make the head of this bolt. That's going to be the form for that. And to do that in the mill, you know, I can do 90 degrees, but I can't do 45 very easily. But if I rotate my part to 45 degrees, now I have a 90-degree angle. So I can come here with the end mill, go boom, boom, right out, and get that. So what I've done is I've set my vise up over here, and I've got it on my rotary plate, or whatever you want to call it, angle plate that goes up underneath this. Normally, I just take this part off because it's just something else that can give you some vibration in your vise, but I do have one that fits this vise. I've got it on here, and I dialed it into 45, but of course I don't trust those dials on there. So to make sure I've got this truly set on 45, I've actually got a little 45-degree angle that I can clamp in the vise here. And now this should be, you know, straight on with this axis on the mill. So I've got my indicator set on here, and as you can see, when I sweep this straight angle here, you know, it's pretty much right on the money. It's 0. So we've got the vise set exactly to 45 degrees, and we're now ready to go ahead and put these parts in here and mill out the last little part of the die. I've got an end mill in here, and so we're going to just barely touch off right there. I'm going to pull this end mill right up to that line. I'm just visually doing this. I'm now going to come back out, dial in my depth. I want to go 225 thousandths deep. So let me, I think we can cut it all in one pass. So that's 100, 225 right there. That looks pretty darn good. All right, guys, there you go. There's the form for the head. It's all in the die now. We put the two pieces together, and we got the socket in there that we're trying to form that shape out of these bolts. So now what I'm going to do is we will cut these bolts to the right length, and we'll sandwich them together. We'll heat that bolt up red hot and take a hammer and basically just upset the entire head down into this form, and hopefully it's going to take on that shape and we'll have bolts ready to go. So here's the game plan, guys. I've already made one of these and just trying everything out, see how it works. And a couple things I learned on the first one, we're going to make a few adjustments here. So we're going to heat this up with the torch. Our blacksmith's not here today. They don't have the shop fired up. I don't feel like going in there and starting up the fire. We're just going to use the torch with a rosebud tip on there to heat this up. Once we get just the end of this, kind of a good, really red to yellow color, we'll pick it up with a pair of pliers. We'll come over here, we'll drop it down into the die. And I've got a stop down here, really for no other reason, just to help me get that quickly to where it needs to go. This die is somewhat of a heat sink. It pulls the heat out of it. In fact, I'm probably going to preheat this a little bit, put a little bit of heat into it anyway. We'll clamp it down and we'll hammer it down. Now, based on what we saw in the first one, it's going to take a couple of heats to get this done. In a production situation, they'd have enough force where they could just push it all together real quick. I'm hitting it on it with a hammer, so it's taking a little bit more time. So that's the game plan. Let's do it. And we're going to preheat the die a little bit. I don't want to get it too hot, but I do want to hopefully try to keep from being quite as much of a heat sink as it was before. Now we're going to heat the bolt, and again we want to get this kind of to a yellowish red. All right, so we're going to heat it up, kind of flatten it back out again, probably put some more heat on it, and then go through this step one more time, and I think we'll have it. All right, a little quick blacksmithing here. All right, let's put some more heat on it. All right, so there's the formed head. You know, we've got a little bit of a edge around the top here. It's not too bad. And what I had to do on the other ones, I had to take them over to the grinder and just kind of clean them up a little bit, and they fit right in. And that's what we'll do with these other ones. So right now I'm going to get two made. I've already got one made, so I'm going to do this one. And we're going to go ahead and put these just back on the sawmill, let you guys see that, and we'll be through for today, and we'll probably make some more bolts out here just to have some spares at a later date. So we're out here at the carriage of the sawmill now and get ready to put this rack back on in. Hopefully you can kind of see how this works. This is the front edge of the carriage that the logs sit on, and the saw blade will be down here, and of course the logs will go in front of the blade to cut them. But the way this moves is there's a big spur gear right here that engages this rack that's up underneath the bottom, and the normal rack sections are about this long here. This piece here that we worked on is actually a short section, about a half section, just to make the total length of the rack the right length. And we put a long section on first, and then this short section, and I think the rest of them in here are all long sections. But anyway, we're going to put this back on, get it mounted back in, and get this buttoned up, and we should be through with this repair job. All right, we're going to put this back in, hopefully one piece at a time here. Let's see. This is really a two-person job. I need an extra set of hands, but we're going to try to make do with what we got. All right, let's try this again. Tighten this first bolt up. That looks good. See if I can get this one up just a touch more. All right, I think we got the rack mounted back in place. On the original sawmill, the frame that the carriage runs on was just made out of wood, exactly like this one is, and it was just bare wood on top. Now, one of the things that we've done out here at the museum is, and this is not original, but one of those necessary things that we felt like we need to do, is we actually put a metal cover over the top of this timber, and we did that for a couple of reasons. The first being that it offers some protection to help keep the rain off of this, to make it just last longer. But also equally important is when we're turning logs over on the carriage, particularly over where the sawed dogs are, you're always in here prying on this with a peavey or a log roller, and it just eats this piece of wood up over time. So by putting this little metal cover on there, we offer some protection, and it just helps preserve it and make it last longer. So there's a couple of screws holding this in. We're going to go ahead and screw that back down, and we'll continue on. I am going to cheat though and use my screw gun here to screw these back in. See it pulling up over here. I want to make sure that I get these back in the same hole, so I'm going to put a couple of screws on this side as well while I'm at it. That pulled it back down. The next thing that goes on are these, which are just some lead weights. And again, this is not original to the sawmill, but what we discovered over time is that when this rack pulls up over the spur gear, there's not enough weight on this to engage it when it's out here on the very ends. Once you get the carriage over, the weight pushes down. So we made a little modification and put these lead weights in to help us get traction on that spur gear. Well, that'll be a wrap to this episode, guys. Another repair done out here at the Georgia Museum of Agriculture to the steam-powered sawmill. And we've now got a tool that we can make new bolts should we need to do this again in the future. And I'm going to go ahead and make some extras up so they'll have them on hand because this is a problem that happens from time to time with the sawmill. So anyway, thank you guys for watching as always, and we'll see you next time.